Hello and welcome to a very special How I Paint Things. Now today what I'm going to show you is a very quick method for putting Sons of the Phoenix on the table. Now is it gorgeous? I'm going to tell you later. No, it's not really, but it will do the job. And in particular, I think that nice deep fuchsia that we get from the contrast we're going to use later on really helps sell the look. If you wanted to, you could paint panels white over the top of what I've done here, but the core of it is going to work just fine. So, as always, all of the paints will be listed in the description below. Let's get started. Before I take this fella outside and prime him, what I want to show you is the steps I've taken just to add the candle at the top here. Now, on the top of the packs, you'll notice there's these little bibbly-bobbly bits. I have no idea what the purpose of some of the Space Marine equipment is, but on the top of the pack, just trim one of them off if that's where you're going to be putting the candles. Reason being, obviously, if they're wax, they are going to sit flush on top of anything that you put them on. But our miniatures, you don't want to try and balance the candle right on top of that. So just file it flat or trim it with a knife. I know it's probably a simple thing, but it is easy to forget some of these details sometimes. Now, if you wanted to, you could go ahead and add a little bit of green stuff. Liquid green stuff would probably be the easiest. It will look really cool. I'm rushing this a little bit, but your result will probably look better than mine. The candles themselves, these come from Anvil Industry, and I'll pop a link in the description for those too. I quite like these little flames. I know it's not quite as visually inspiring as those big looping flames, but these are going to survive in a case, and that's a detail that I quite like. So let's cruise outside, give this fella a spray. So first of all, what I've done is to hit this fella with a black primer. Now if I flip him up, you'll see that a little more clearly. And then from above, roughly 45 degree sort of angle, I've sprayed white from there. Now you can use any white paint you like, but something with a smooth finish is going to be easier to apply the contrast we're going to use over the top of. So I recommend either Army Painter's matte white or the Citadel white, which is designed for contrast. That'll give you the best results here. Now speaking of contrast, what I've got here is Volupus Pink with a little bit of contrast medium in there. Strictly speaking, you don't need to use the medium, but I tend to find it's a really easy way to make sure that this stuff doesn't clump up and go weird on power armor, basically. So we'll apply this over the arm, and you can be quite generous with it. You'll see the medium, it leaves it wet a little while longer for us to work with. So let's apply this over the arm and the knee pad. When it comes to the shoulder pad, easiest way I find to do this is to start in the corner, a sweeping motion, and add a little bit more paint to fill in the center. Now, once we've done this a couple of times, you'll see we do get these tide marks up on the top. Just guide those away while your contrast is still wet, and that's where the medium really comes in handy. If you want to strengthen this color, you can wait for this to dry, and then apply a second coat over the top. And isn't that nice? That's such a rich purple. I really like how that turns out. And with the addition of the medium, we avoid the worst of the sort of blobbing and tide marks that you sometimes get on power armor. So that's just sorts it out. What I'm going to do now is paint in some other stuff with contrast. And I'm going to use both of the black contrast colors. Starting off with Black Templar, we're going to paint the undersuit of the armor. So let's flip them around here. And I'm using this because this is a slight blue-black finish to it. And it doesn't cover quite as strongly as Black Legion does. So take your time here. The beautiful thing as well is if you make a little splash or anything, just let the contrast dry. And you can paint back over the base coat with a little bit of white. It won't be a problem. Then when it comes to his equipment, so his leather belt and the pouches that he's wearing, what I've got is Black Legion. Now this is a much darker, almost traditional black paint. Like you apply that and goodness me, that covers so well. If you do want to use just one of these, you don't want to buy two black contrasts, Black Legion, use it for both of these steps, but that's up to you. Now that's not quite dry, but that's over white. That is such a rich black, really dark, really nice color to have. I use it all the time for painting boots and rifle details on my bolt action miniatures. It is brilliant. We're going to use now Skeleton Horde though, and paint in the purity seals. If you are braver than I am, you'll probably have a few more on your miniature, but I didn't really want to go too far out with these. And then for the wax on those, we'll use Blood Angel's Red. But while I'm thinking about wax, I must remember to actually paint the candles. This will be quite bright going on, but remember we are going to shade all of this later, so for now, this will work fine. Now for once, what I'm going to show you here is not what I would actually do if I had the right tools. I've mixed in some Iyanden yellow to a little bit of contrast medium, roughly half and half, but I'd suggest if you are going to do this, just use the Imperial Fist yellow. Iyanden yellow dries a little orange, so that's why I've thinned this out to try and prevent that. And I will use the same mix to paint in the eyes. Now I don't know how well this is going to work once this is shaded. So like I said, you should probably do as I say here, not as I do, and use that Imperial Fist stuff. But this will work all right, I think. Now that's the last of the contrast base coats we're going to apply. Honestly, there's nothing stopping you from using, say, Evil Sun Scarlet, Flayed One Flesh, all that sort of stuff, traditional acrylics. But I tend to find the, especially over a white primer, the contrast colors are quite useful, and I really like how they turn out. But you can't beat metallics for metallic paints. So I'm using here my Iron Hands Steel, and I'm going to cover over, I'll let you guess, all of the metal parts. Take your time and go slow when you approach anywhere that you've already painted with the contrast, because you want to avoid having to do any tidy up if you can. And then, no great surprise, we're going to go to Retributor Armour to paint in the gold details. Now, take your time here, and I've probably got too big a brush for this, but that'll be my hubris that gets in the way, not yours. You may find in some areas that you do need to come back and give this a second coat. I tend to find the easiest way to approach Space Marine shoulder pads is to come at them from the side like this, and just use the edge of your brush to paint those in, sort of like it's flat instead. But however you do it, if you do make any mistakes, particularly on the purple, you can still go back with a little bit of white, but if it's just a little splash over the edge, like into the field of the shoulder pad, don't worry about it, because when we shade it, it's more or less going to disappear. When it comes to painting the chest eagle, instead of trying to stab at it from the front, tuck it in behind his arm here. You'll be able to get most of it from this side, slowly turning the miniature away so that the point of your brush is avoiding the white stuff. Now, same too on the other side of the eagle. Obviously we've got quite a lot happening here, so to get at that, if you're going to make a mistake, try and angle your brush so that it's going to end up hitting the silver stuff, which will be a little easier to tidy up. See, I've already made a blob there. Some folks will insist on painting the arms separate to the Space Marine in order that you can reach the chest eagle a little easier. But if you're looking at speed painting and you want an army on the table as quickly as possible, stop making work for yourself. Right? You're not going to see the very worst bits that you've missed, I promise. Anyhow, the final one of the base coats that we're going to apply is some black. Now here I'm using Vallejo's black, simply because it covers better. But you can also use a Baden black here too. You'll probably just need to come back and give it a second coat. Take your time around the silver that you've done. And once you've done this, you can go back with any white or other base coats that you need to tidy up. Then we'll be ready for our shade. And try not to sweat the cleanup. You can leave a few little bits here and there. Don't worry about everything being perfect. We're looking for the effect of a unit on the table here. The shade we're going to use, this I've called all sorts of things over the years, but Marine Juice works best. It is equal parts non-oil, Reichland Flesh Shade, and Lahmian Medium. Now what I'm using, this is mixed up from the old stuff, the old shades. Does it work with the new shades? Yes. The only real difference is in how the Lahmian Medium will make it flow. That's the important part to the sauce. What I'm going to do is go ahead and start applying this fairly generously over the entire miniature. Now, any big flat areas, just work it away. Make sure you're getting it into any recesses. But otherwise, yeah, just go nuts. The whole miniature. And once you've applied this over everything, we'll leave this to dry for about half an hour, or as long as it needs. Now bear in mind, once you've first applied that, that's going to be over the top of pure white that you've been staring at the whole time. So it is going to look dreadful going on. You need to hold your nerve and apply it over the entire miniature. Make sure that you're getting it in everywhere. And once it's dried, you get this. And that's not too bad. You know, particularly if we're looking to get Marines on the table as quickly as possible, we could base this up and call them done here. That's not a bad result at all. But what I'm going to do is a couple of highlights just to show you how you can elevate this a little. So what I've got here is a dollop full of white on my palette there. And I'm going to get roughly the same amount in Volupus Pink again. Mix those together. And once they're good and mixed together, they make a really good highlight for our pink. So take your time here and just pick out a couple of areas where you want a nice sharp line. There we go. This will look quite extreme as it goes on. As it dries, it's going to look a lot more reasonable and mesh together very nicely with the contrast underneath. And because you've got the white, you can highlight the white armor as well. Now the temptation will be to highlight pretty much everything, but what I'm going to suggest is stick to areas up near the top of the miniature. So his helmet, his power plant, and the top of his arms. Now, if you highlight everything, you're going to basically slow down your speed painting. So pick the battles and what you really want to draw attention to. Now from there, a little bit of Dawnstone on your bolter casings, just at the corners will normally do the job. And then the final highlight I'm going to apply will be a little bit of Liberator Gold. Now afterwards you could highlight the silver if you wanted to. Something like Stormhost Silver, or even just going back to your Ironhand Steel might do the job, but that is up to you. I think because we've used such a light color for our base coat when it comes to the metal, don't have to worry too much about whether or not we're going to highlight that. So once I've finished with this, I'm going to go ahead and varnish them. Now I do recommend with Space Marines ordinarily using a satin varnish. A gloss is just a little bit much to my eye, but matte, well, it photographs better, but it doesn't really look like the candy finish that really suits power armor. So Minotaur and varnish, funnily enough, is going to be a really good choice for that. Pop a simple base on him, and I'll put the recipe for that one in the description. Let's go look at our chappy here once he is all finished. And there at last, our Son of the Phoenix is complete. Is he gorgeous? Well, he'll do the job. And I think a squad painted up like that, let alone an army, is going to look brilliant. Now, if you do mix in some contrast medium to whatever color you're planning to use, it will also work much better on flat panels. So if you're looking at dreadnoughts or other vehicles, this technique will still, by and large, do the job. I've done a video on scaling up the methods that I've used to paint Space Marines before for vehicles, and honestly, any way that you paint a Space Marine, you can paint a vehicle. They're just, the Space Marine is walking armor. Now there are a few places out there that do custom decals, so if you want to find some water slide transfers for the Sons of the Phoenix, I know the Mighty Brush is a pretty good place to go to for customs. You can ask around on Reddit or on Facebook if there are local solutions to you. As well, there's also 3D printed shoulder pads out there, but you can go hunt those. They're everywhere, so don't worry too much if you can't get your hands on transfers straight away. Just make sure when you apply them, varnish them again. So, as always, thank you very much to Exit 23 Games for the light and sound equipment, as well as all of the wonderful patrons who are keeping me ticking in paints and glue, including my producers, Alan Nuttall, Kyrie Crawford, Andrew, Rod, and Jimmy. Your support lets me keep buying Space Marines. Any questions or anything, feel free to drop them in the old comment box below. My Twitter and Instagram are both linked there too. So, thank you very much for your time, one and all, and you all enjoy the rest of your day.